Welcome to Catholic Ed for All, your weekly insight into topics of special education in Catholic schools. My name is Dr. Raul Escarpio, and I invite you to join me each week as we learn how to be more inclusive in Catholic schools and continue to live out St. John Paul II's message of open wide the doors to Christ. Many thanks go out to RCL Benzinger, who is generously sponsoring this podcast. RCL Benzinger enriches the worldwide Catholic community by providing the most engaging and highest quality resources, programs, and services rooted in the rich and diverse tradition of the Catholic faith. And now, on to our show. On the show today, I am joined by Mrs. Michelle Tetschner, author of Fully Included, Stories to Inspire Inclusion, and she's also from Upper Marlboro, Maryland. Hello, Michelle. Welcome to the show, and thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Raul. I'm feeling very blessed to be having this conversation with you, so thank you.
Amen. She's feeling blessed, everyone, so amen to that. So can you please tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am happily married for 30 years to my husband, Stacy. We have 3 boys. We have Stefan and Jen, who live in Charlotte, that just got married. Mitchell, our middle son, is doing his master's at Texas A&M. And Raymond, our youngest, is 16, and he happens to rock an extra chromosome and has Down syndrome.
Rock an extra chromosome. Excellent. So tell me, while you're at it, tell me a little bit about Raymond.
Raymond we call him the glue that keeps our family together. We laugh and say that our older boys don't even come home to see us. They only come home to see Raymond. So he's a great kid. He's very, very funny. He's very smart, and he just is an amazing kid.
Okay, so let's talk about him being amazing. I interviewed Dr. Marco Clark last week, and I know that I interviewed Abby Greer earlier in the year. So if Raymond rocks the extra chromosome, we need to rock the greatness that is Bishop McNamara High School. So can you tell me a little bit about the successes that Raymond's had in Bishop McNamara and why you decided to put him there?
Yeah, we had recently moved to the East Coast from Arizona, where we were for 25 years. So we had been in a program that we weren't in love with. We felt like it could be more inclusive. We really, really have always had a vision for Raymond to be around his gen ed peers. That's where he learns the best. That's where he picks up the handshakes and the high fives and the hey buddies and all that kind of rich language is where he gets that is from those typical peers. And we happened to run into Abby Greer at a CCSE event, and she had mentioned that she would be open to having a discussion with me about starting a program. And so the following week we met with her, and we met with Dr. Clark and Dr. Traylor. And we all sat at the table and had an open conversation about what our expectations were and how we could make it work. And we all said yes. And so that started last fall. And so Raymond is finishing his first year at Bishop McNamara, and it's been amazing.
Amen. And Michelle, you said something that I know that a lot of people in the special education field know, but I need you to highlight this for everyone else. Why do you think he learns best with typical learning peers? Because that was a very bold and strong statement you just made.
Raymond is really good at repeating things that he sees. And so he's got to see everyone else doing social things. He's got to see everyone else having the conversations about the songs, about what's going on, currently. And that's how he does it, is he repeats things and does them best. So if he's in a segregated class where everyone else is having language delays, then he's not going to gain that, which is what he needs best. So
in a nutshell, he needs to be in an inclusive setting. He needs to be, pardon the pun, and fully included, as your book says, to basically bring out his skills and to bring out what he can do in the classroom.
Absolutely, because our long-term vision for Raymond is to have a job, to live with a roommate independently, perhaps ride the bus to work, go to work, to be able to read the bulletins, to be able to check in with people and to have conversations with those coworkers. So if that's what we want, that's what he needs to start modeling now. And so he has to be around those Gen Ed peers.
And music to my ears, and so many others that are listening right now. I mean, I know Beth Foraker is just like smiling from ear to ear, and Diane Elliott and Victoria Graff and Gil Donahue. Oh my goodness, and Doreen, everybody's smiling right now just to hear those words, because at the end of the day, we want them to be independent. We need them to be independent, Michelle, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So what's this I hear about you being an author? How did that happen, first of all?
Well, I've always been able to share Raymond's successes. We celebrate all of his successes. They can be little, they can be big, but the more we reward the positive things that he does, the more he excels. And so we've always been very joyful in all of the strengths and talents that he brings to the table. And we aren't the only ones. And so I started running into people on Facebook and in person, and I was like, hey, I didn't know that there was somebody being fully included in Oregon. I didn't know that there's someone in the Diocese of New York that's doing it. I didn't know all of these things. And so I wanted to capture and bring all of those stories into one book, which will hopefully be inspiring, but also to be a resource, so that when a parent is meeting with a principal or an educator, they can say, look, you're not the first one here. Don't be so worried. Don't be so fearful. These people are doing it too. We can do this.
So can you share some of like a couple snippets and some stories from the book that, as you were writing it, that really touched your heart?
Sure, absolutely. One of the amazing stories is a diploma for Anna. And Anna is actually in public school, but her mom has been working towards getting a regular diploma for her. And so her story was written about 6 months ago. She just gave us an update, and she passed all of her state tests. And so this girl is graduating with a diploma with accommodations and little modifications, but still that's an amazing feat. And so I think that that's, so inspiring to all of us, that these things can be done. A lot of people don't even attempt to do it because they don't think it can be conquered, and yet it is being done. The book also has stories from parents, but it also has stories from educators and principals, and of course Dr. Clark's story is in here as well.
So when you're looking at this book, and I'll make sure that I include the link for our listeners for them to be able to purchase this. But um, let's talk a little about the voice of parents in this process, Michelle, because I know you're a faithful listener to the podcast, because you told me, and you hear a lot about leaders on the podcast, a lot about teachers and how to start their programs. How can parents have a voice in all this, and not drowned in the red tape and everything that they have to do? What do you want? What do we tell parents, Michelle? Let's start with that. If they have a child with a special gene, or they're rocking that special chromosome, how can we support them?
I think it's twofold. I think that parents have to have confidence that the programs are being done, that they are working, that they are being implemented. But the principals really play a huge part in this, and so do the educators and those teachers that are doing the day-to-day. But when a parent approaches a school, and approaches a Catholic school in specific, it is, your heart is so worried, because all of a sudden we're tying a teaching with your faith. And so I would ask the principals to be open to the idea. I think a lot of us have a very small box of what education should look like. But I think if we can think outside of that box and think of some creative ways, that bringing a child with special needs into your school is not that complicated. chances are you already have diverse learners. You know, one style does not fit everybody. So why can't this diverse learner also be in your classroom? We're not asking our children to be up to grade level in many times, and especially in our circumstances. So that frees a lot of misconceptions right out of the box.
And
Does
if
that
I,
make sense?
yes, it does. And let me add to that. Some administrators, some, not all, will see a parent coming in and say, well, they're going to get very passionate about this. They're going to start, maybe getting a little teary-eyed about including them. And we need to arm our parents, Michelle, with knowledge. And we need to let them know why it would work in Catholic schools. And not just saying, I mean, the number one reason, as I quote my friend Michael Boyle, is, baptism is their birthright. They are allowed to be in Catholic schools according to their baptism. But beyond that,
Yes.
what can we say to principals and to let them know how it can change the culture of their school?
Exactly. I would say, look at your mission statement. I would go directly to what my child brings to your school. I know for a fact that Raymond has changed multiple students at Bishop McNamara. I know that Raymond has changed multiple students wherever he has attended, also at the school in Arizona where we did elementary school. When you look at your mission statement, it is usually talking about making the kids, college prep, ready to be better citizens, to do all these things. Guess what? That's what my son does. He teaches empathy, he teaches compassion, he teaches patience, and makes these students go, think beyond themselves and to think of others first.
That's fantastic. So it goes beyond the learning process. And I know a lot of the listeners saying, duh, we understand that. It goes to the culture change and the mission of the school.
Yes.
Dr. Clark last week was very intentional about saying that it was necessary to put it as part of the mission and just to make sure of the school and make sure that it works that way. So, with that being said, if we want to tie a bow on all this, um, what can we let parents know? What should be their first step if they want to bring a child into a school?
I think it's making an appointment with the principal and sitting down at the table and having an honest conversation about expectations. We were able to contact a principal at Our Lady of Perpetual Hope in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I'll never forget how she sat down and we started with a prayer, and she said, I have to be honest with you, I don't know that we can do this. And I said, if you are open to this and we can talk about what your expectations are and what our expectations are, I think this will work. And she gave us a school tour and she said, do you think your son will fit in? Yes, he will. He loves being around other kids. He wants to be joyful. He wants to, be successful and be loved. We're way more alike than we are different. He has a different learning style, but that's the only thing that differentiates him from most students in many times in many circumstances.
I love when you say we're way more alike than different. Amen. Amen to that. So, with that being said, the last question is, what should Catholic special education look like?
I think that it's going to look different in every single circumstance and in every different school because they have a different culture. But I think it's being included. I think that we are all worthy of bringing our talents and our strengths to the table. And those other students, going back to them again, we talk Catholic education and we talk about growing leaders. Well, these are the doctors, the lawyers, the nurses. These kids need to be around my son so that they can be comfortable in doing their job. The population of people with disabilities is only growing, it's not shrinking. And so they will then have exposure to my son, which will make them better at their job. Then they will feel comfortable to hire my son, to supervise him, to live next to him, and hopefully to be friends with him. and so that we can all, be successful and be loved.
Amen. Amen. Michelle, I would like to thank you for joining me on the program today. You have really enhanced this program today. I wish you nothing but prayers and blessings as you move forward and you continue advocating for parents and their right for fully including their children in Catholic schools. God bless you, and I'm so glad you were able to join me. Well, that's it for this week. If this podcast was a blessing to you, can you please head over to iTunes and subscribe and give us a review or a rating? It really does help other Catholic educators find the podcast and use it as a resource. Thanks again to the amazing people at RCL Benziger for generously sponsoring this podcast. Check out their new resource for Catholic schools, Blessed Are We, Faith in Action, which enables teachers to share the love of Christ with children who have special needs. Visit rclbenziger.com to learn more. Join me again next time as we continue to advance God's kingdom by including all of God's children in Catholic schools and faith formation. Until then, this is Dr. Raul Escarpio. Thanks for listening, and may God bless your day.